Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to talk about plotting points, and these points are called ordered pairs, and so we're going to talk about what an ordered pair is as we go through this. But in general, just note that we use the idea of an ordered pair to describe the location of a point in a plane. So let's talk about the idea of a plane. Okay, so the system that we're going to use to plot these points or these ordered pairs is called the rectangular, let me write this down, the rectangular coordinate system. The rectangular coordinate system, or sometimes we just say the coordinate plane. Okay, so when we draw this rectangular coordinate system, or when we draw this coordinate plane, we start out with the horizontal axis, and we'll call the horizontal axis the x-axis. And on the horizontal axis, we have a number line. It looks just like a number line. So let's say this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. All right, now, although we're using whole numbers here, just know that any point on this number line represents a real number. I mean, this could be 1.27, 1.6895, and so on. This could be 2.5. This could be 2 2/3, and so on. Okay, but we're just labeling the whole number parts here. And then on this side, we have the negative numbers. So these represent the integers. So -2, -3, -4, and so on. Notice though, you have to make sure that the lengths between each of these numbers that you represent are the same. Otherwise, when you graph, it won't look correct. So that's the horizontal axis. So the horizontal axis is called the x-axis. All right, so the horizontal axis is called the x-axis. The horizontal axis, that's the x-axis. All right. Then there's also a vertical axis, and see where we have that 0 right here? So we have a vertical axis that goes through 0, just like this. That's supposed to be vertical, a straight line. Don't forget your arrows. And we call the vertical axis the y-axis. So that's our y-axis. This is our x-axis. So the horizontal is the x-axis, the vertical is the y-axis. And just like a number line, now notice that when the x and y-axis intersected, the numbers to the right on the x-axis are positive, the numbers to the left are negative. And so the same thing on the y-axis. So when I go up, the numbers are positive, and when I go below the x-axis on the y-axis, the numbers are negative. Okay? All right. Now, notice that the x and y-axis both intersect at 0. 0 on the x-axis, 0 on the y-axis. That's called the origin. The origin. So the origin is the point, the point where the axes intersect. All right, so the ordered pair is the point. The origin is the point where the axes, both the x-axis and the y-axis, intersect. That's a point of intersection. All right, now notice that the x and y axis divided this plane, this coordinate plane, and notice this coordinate plane extends in all directions. It's an infinite plane. But it divides it into 4 quadrants. I'm using the word quadrants. Quadrants. Remember, quad means 4. The idea of quad means 4. So we start in this axis right here. I'm sorry, this quadrant right here, that's called quadrant 1. Okay, and so we used Roman numerals represent that. So that's quadrant 1, and we go counterclockwise. Counterclockwise. This would be quadrant 2. This part of the plane right here is called quadrant 3. And the plane that's on this part right here is called quadrant 4. All right, so quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. Okay? All right, so together this is called the rectangular coordinate system, or simply we just call it the coordinate plane. All right, now what we want to do, and as we go through this, just keep in mind all right, so just keep in mind that when we plot these points, and so each point in this plane, each point, notice I'm plotting points here. Each point in this plane, and there are an infinite number of points, but each point in this plane represents an ordered pair. So notice the word ordered pair again. So each point in this plane represents an ordered pair. There's an infinite set of ordered pairs. Some lie in quadrants, like this point lies in quadrant 1. This ordered pair lies in quadrant 2. This ordered pair lies in quadrant 4. This ordered pair or point lies in quadrant 3. Now, not all points lie in a quadrant. Not all points lie in a quadrant. These points lie in a quadrant, that's quadrant 1. These points lie in a quadrant, that's quadrant 2. These points here lie in a quadrant, that's quadrant 3. These points lie in a quadrant, that's quadrant 4. But notice that this point here, right here, or this point here, or this point here, and so on, they don't lie in a quadrant. They instead, we say they lie on the x-axis, in particular the positive x-axis, but they lie in the x-axis. Same thing here. These points lie on the x-axis. In particular, they lie on the negative part of the x-axis. Okay? Same thing here. This point right here, does not lie in a quadrant. So don't say it lies in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 at the same time. That's not true. Only these points lie in quadrant 1, these points lie in quadrant 2. We say that this point here lies on the y-axis. This point here lies on the y-axis. This point here lies in quadrant 3. This point here lies on the y-axis. This point here lies in quadrant 4. This point here lies on the x-axis. Okay? All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to plot some points, some ordered pairs. So we're going to see how to plot points, how to plot ordered pairs. All right, but keep in mind that as we go through this, as we plot, I'm going to plot on this right here. As we plot these points, these ordered pairs, just note that each ordered pair corresponds to exactly one point. So you're going to see this as you go through this in the plane, and that each point in the plane corresponds to exactly one ordered pair. All right, so each ordered pair represents one point in the plane. So if I say plot this ordered pair, then there can only be one point that represents it. It can't be more than 1 point. It has to be just 1 point. 1 point represents just one ordered pair. Okay? All right. So let's plot these points. So let's see. We're gonna. All right. So the direction is going to say that on a single coordinate plane, plot each ordered pair. So let's plot each ordered pair. All right, plot each ordered pair. And then you want to state the quadrant. Say the quadrant, or on which, state in which quadrant or on which axis each point lies. So state the quadrant or axis on which each point lies. Okay, so the first one. All right, first one, let's say, is this ordered pair. Now, before we go on, let's talk about ordered pair again. All right, so when we talk about an ordered pair, or when we talk about a point, so a point, an ordered pair has an x-coordinate, so the x-coordinate is the first number, and the second number listed is the y-coordinate. All right, so each ordered pair represents a pair of points, a pair of numbers. So the first number is the x-coordinate, so the x-coordinate must always be listed first. The y-coordinate must always be listed second, so it has to be in that order, x, y. It's easy to remember because it's alphabetical order, but it has to be in that order. It has to be that ordered pair, x, y. So when you look at this right here, when I asked you to plot the point 4, 2, the 4 represents the y-coordinate, the x-coordinate, and the 2 represents the y-coordinate. All right, so always keep that in mind. The first number listed is the x-coordinate. The second number listed is the y-coordinate. Okay? All right, so here's how you're going to plot this. When plotting a point, you always start at the origin. So here's the origin right here. You always start at the origin. Now remember, I want to plot the point 4, 2. I want to plot the point 4, 2. So keep in mind 4, 2. All right, now it's also important that you ask yourself, or you say this. This is the x-coordinate is positive and the y-coordinate is positive. All right, we're going to do some where they're negative. But in this case, the x-coordinate is positive, the y-coordinate is positive. Okay? All right, so remember, I'm plotting the point 4, 2. All right, 4, 2 is what I'm plotting. All right, so always start at the origin. Since x is positive 4, I'm going to go to the right 4 units. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, don't put the point here. That's just where you are right now. All right, so you're just standing there. And then you got to look at the y-coordinates. Always do x first. So then the y-coordinate is where you go up and down. The x-coordinate go left and right. All right, so again, start at the origin. I had to go 4 units to the right because my x-coordinate is positive. Then I've got to walk 2 units up because the y-coordinate is positive. So walk 2 units up. So 1, 2. So this is the point. So you're going to plot this point and you're going to label. So this point is labeled 4, 2. So notice 4, 2. No other place in this plane represents 4, 2. No other point in this plane represents the ordered pair 4, 2. This is the only point that represents the ordered pair 4, 2. That's what this right here was implied. Each ordered pair corresponds to exactly 1 point. So you can't say it's here, you can't say it's here, or anywhere else. This is the only place where the ordered pair 4, 2 is located. All right, now let's look at the other one. So so that was 4, 2. All right, B. All right, for B, suppose we had -1, -3. -1, -3. All right, so again, we're plotting the point, the ordered pair, -1, -3. So remember, this is your x-coordinate, this is your y-coordinate. So start the origin, always start the origin. Since the x-coordinate is negative, I'm going to go to the left, but I'm going to go to the left 1 unit. So here's -1, right here. So I went to the left 1 unit. Then I got I got to talk about the y-coordinate. The y-coordinate is a -3, so that means that from here I go down 3 units. 1, 2, 3. So this right here represents the point -1, -3. All right, now notice that this point, let's talk about this, the location. So -4, 2, -4, 2 is in quadrant 1. So notice that's quadrant 1 right here. Quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. And over here, negative 1, negative 3 is in quadrant 3. So that's quadrant 3. All right. Part C. All right, suppose we had 2, negative 2. 2, negative 2. Okay, so again, I want to plot the point 2, negative 2. So the x-coordinate's a positive 2, the y-coordinate's a negative 2. So from the origin, you always do the x first. Now from the origin, I'm going to go to the right 2 units because 2 is positive, so I go to the right 2 units. The y-coordinate is negative. So from here, remember I can go to the right 2 units and then down 2. So here's the point. Here's the point, 2, negative 2. So we're going to label it 2, negative 2. All right, so 2, negative 2 is in quadrant 4. So that's quadrant 4. So this is quadrant 4. Right. D. So D, let's suppose we had negative 5, 1. Negative 5, 1. So I want to plot the point, negative 5, 1. I want to plot the ordered pair, negative 5, negative 5, 1. All right, so again, you start the origin. The x-coordinate is negative 5, so that means I'm going to go to the left 5 units, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the y-coordinate's a positive 1, so I'm going to go up 1 unit right here. So there's the point. I plotted the point. Now I'm going to label it negative 5, 1. All right, so negative 5, 1 lies in quadrant 2. So this is quadrant 2. All right, E. All right, suppose this time I want to plot the point 0, 3. 0, 3. Now, students have trouble when one of the coordinates is 0. They don't have any issues where one of the coordinates is a non-zero number like these. But when it's 0, they tend to have an issue. All right, so be a little bit careful. So let's look at the point 0, 3. So I want to plot the point 0, 3. All right, so remember you started the origin. So the idea is the same as these, but it still throws some students off. So start of the origin. All right, now remember, the x-coordinate is the first coordinate. Your first coordinate is your x-coordinate. So that's where you go left to right on the x-axis. Okay, so you started the origin. Now notice that if x is positive, you're going to go to the right. If x is negative, you're going to go to the left. Now here, though, x is 0. All right, so x is 0. If x was 1, I go to the right 1. If x is negative 6, I go to the left negative 6. But x is 0. So that means I stay there. I stay right here. I don't move because x is 0. All right, now let's talk about the y-coordinate. The y-coordinate is a positive 3. So since I didn't move, I'm still the origin. I am still at the origin. All right, now I'm going to do the y-coordinate. The y-coordinate is a positive 3, so I'm going to go up 3. 1, 2, 3. So this is a point right here. When I label it, that's the point 0, 3. So 0, 3 is located on the y-axis. So the y-axis. Right. So it's not in a quadrant. 0, 3 is not in any particular quadrant. It is on the y-axis. All right. F. Suppose you had 3, 0 this time. All right, 3, 0. So we know that 0, 3 is on the y-axis. So let's talk about 3, 0. Where's 3, 0 located? Okay. So again, you start the origin. You do the x-coordinate first. The x-coordinate's a positive 3, so that means I move to the right 3 units. So this is where I'm at, right here. All right, now let's talk about the y-coordinate. Remember, y-coordinate, you move up or down. But in this case, though, the y-coordinate is 0. So that means I don't move up or down. I stay here. So this is where I stay. So this point right here represents the point 3, 0. So 3, 0 right here. So again, I move to the right 3 units. Since the y-coordinate is 0, I don't go up or down. I stay where I'm at. So that's the point 3, 0. Notice, though, that 3, 0 is not in quadrant 1 and it's not in quadrant 4. It is on the x-axis. So that's quadrant 1. I'm sorry, that's on the x-axis. So that's where the point 3, 0 is located. So 3, 0 is on the x-axis. All right. Now notice though, when we plotted these points, these x-coordinates and y-coordinates, they were all integers. But there can be fractions. You can plot fractions, you can plot decimals, some ordered pairs that contain fractions, ordered pairs that contain decimals. Any ordered pair, any x-coordinate can be a real number, any real number, and the y-coordinate can be any real number as well. When they're fractions or decimals, you're just going to estimate where they are. You see, these were easy. These right here were easy because the points lied on where the grid lines intersect. See, this grid line intersected here. This point lied on where these two grid lines intersect. This point lied where these two grid lines intersect, and so on. But sometimes, though, you could have a point that does not lie on a grid line. In that case, you're going to estimate where it's located. So what that means is this. So let's look at G. So we do G, we have -2 and 1/2, comma 0. -2 and 1/2, comma 0. All right, so it's not that difficult. You're just going to estimate where -2.5 is located. Remember, 2.5 is 2.5. All right, so you start the origin. All right, so remember, applying the point -2 and 1/2, comma 0. So I start the origin, and I'm going to go to the left 2.5 units. So 1, 2, and a half is between -2 and -3. And so this is where I'm at. I'm just kind of estimate where the half is located, -2.5. All right, now the y-coordinate is 0, so that means I stay where I'm at. So this right here is the point. That's the point, -2 and 1/2, comma 0. All right, so -2 and 1/2, comma 0 is located on the x-axis. All right, so let's look at H. So let's suppose in H we had 2, comma, -5 and 1/3. 2, comma, -5 and 1/3. All right. So again, we have a fraction right here, so we're going to have to estimate where it's located. Okay, so you start, remember, trying to plot the point 2, comma, -5 and 1/3. All right, so again, I start the origin. The x-coordinate is a +2, so I go to the right 2 units. And then the y-coordinate is a -5 and 1/3. So I go down 5 units, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a third more. So third, let's say, is right here. So so it's between -5 and -5.5. So let's say this is a third. All right, so it's close to -5. Don't make it close to -6. It's closer to -5 because we're talking about 1/3. Remember, 1/3 is 0.33333, and so on. All right, so notice that this point here does not lie on a grid line where two grid lines intersect. So we estimate it. So this is the point 2, comma, -5 and 1/3. All right, and again, that point lies in quadrant 4. So this is quadrant 4. Okay. All right, and then let's do one more. So this is H, I. Let's do 2 more. So let's suppose we want to plot the point 0, -4. 0, -4. All right, so 0, -4. So start the origin. The x-coordinate is 0. I don't move left or right. I stay where I'm at because x is 0. The y-coordinate is -4. So I go down 4 units. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the point right here. This is the point 0, -4. So that's a point 0, -4. So 0, -4 lies on the y-axis. And then finally, suppose we had this. Suppose we had 1, comma. Let's see if I have enough room. All right, so let's suppose I had 1, comma, -7 and 3/4. 1, comma, -7 and 3/4. So 1, comma, -7 and 3/4. Okay, so I started the origin. The x-coordinate is +1, so I go to the right 1 unit. the y coordinates are negative 7 and 3/4. So from here I'm going to go down because y is negative. Go down 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But then I had to go 3/4 more. So remember 3/4. Use your calculator if you need to. Change to the decimal. 3/4 is 0.75. So I go. I didn't mean to put a little mark here. So I go 0.75 more. So 3/4 more. So that's about here. All right. So this is the point right here. 1 comma negative 7 and 3/4. Okay. All right. Now the next thing we're going to do is given. So in this case, you were given ordered pairs, and you were asked to plot the points. You could also be given points that are already plotted, and then you're going to ask to determine what the ordered pair is. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so now what we're going to look at is that notice that in this plane you have points that have been plotted, and what you want to do in this case is for each of these points that are plotted, you want to indicate the coordinates. So you want to write what that ordered pair represents. You want to label it, so to speak. Okay. All right. So let's talk about A. So we're going to put the ordered pairs here. So the point A right here. So let's talk about how to determine the ordered pair. So you start at the origin. Remember, you started the origin. Okay. So I'm going to get to this point. So to get to this point, always do the X first. So always go left, right first, and then we're going to do the Y, up and down. So to get to this point, I'm going to move to the left. Notice I'm moving to the left until I get right under it. Okay? So this is where it's located. So you move to the left until you get right on it. So I'll move to the left 8 units. So that's the X coordinate. So the X coordinate is -8. And then I'm going to go, now I'm going to go up to this point. So remember, when you move to the left, it's negative. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So notice it corresponds to this 8 right here. So -8, +8. So my y coordinates are +8. All right. So this point here that lies in quadrant 2 is -8, +8. So notice that points that lie in quadrant 2, the x coordinate's negative, the y coordinate's positive. All right, so you'll notice that all the x coordinates are negative here. Every point here, the x coordinate's negative because that's how you get to the. So when you start the origin, you move to the left, and then the y coordinates are positive because you're moving up. All right, so all these y coordinates are positive, all these x coordinates are negative. All right, now let's determine what B is. So B is located here, and notice that's quadrant 1. Okay, so again, you start the origin. So you're going to move to the right, and you're going to move till you get right under that point. So here's that point right here. You're right under it. So that means that when I move to the right from the origin, I moved 9 units to the right. So that means that, and always make sure your ordered pairs are represented with parentheses. Now don't confuse that with an interval. Remember this is a different context here. So in this context we're talking about plotting points. All right, so the x coordinate is +9, and then I'm going to go up. So I got to go up. So when I go up, it's positive. And notice when I go up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it corresponds to this as well. So I have +9, +5, +9, +5. Okay, and again, that's in quadrant 1. All right, C. Let's talk about C. All right, so again, you start at the origin, and notice that in this case, I don't move right or left at all, and the reason is because I'm already under that point. See, I'm already under that point. So that means that since I didn't move at all, that means that my x coordinate is 0. Now to get to the y coordinate, I've got to move up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that corresponds to this number right here. So this represents the point 0, 8. And notice that also from a previous discussion, that point C does not lie in a quadrant. Point C lies on the y-axis. All right, D. Let's talk about where D is located. All right, so D is here. So that's in quadrant 3. All right, so you start the origin. I've got to move to the left. All right, so I'm going to move to the left until I get right above it. So right above it. So that's here. So that's -8. So for D, the x-coordinate of my ordered pair is going to be -8. Notice you may make sure you use parentheses. Then to get to that point, I'm right here right now. To get to that point, I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to go down 4 units, so that represents -4. So there's the point, -8, -4. So remember, any point that's in quadrant 3, the x-coordinates will be negative and the y-coordinates will be negative. Negative, negative. All right, E. So E is located right here. So I start the origin. I go 2 units to the right. And notice I don't go anywhere else because I'm already at that point. So I stay here. I don't go anywhere else. I don't go up or down. I stay here. All right, so let's talk about this again. So we're determining E. So I start the origin and I go 2 units to the right. So that means my x-coordinate is positive. And then, since I'm already at that point, I stop. And so that's 0. So that's the point to 0. So notice that whenever you're on the y-axis, on the x-axis, on this part of the x-axis, the x is 0. When you're in this part of the x-axis, the x-coordinate is, I didn't mean 0, I mean positive. When you're in this part of the x-axis, the x-coordinate is negative. So x-coordinate is positive here, x-coordinate is negative here. All right, F. All right, for F, which is here, you start the origin. You're going to go to the right 7 units, on right when you get above it. So that means that the x-coordinate is 7, positive 7. And I've got to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which corresponds to this, go down 6, which corresponds to this number right here, -6. So the y-coordinate's -6. All right, so notice that whenever you're in quadrant 4, this is quadrant 4, your x-coordinates are positive and your y-coordinates are negative. X-coordinates are positive, y-coordinates are negative. And then finally, well, no, just a few more. G. Here's G. So you start the origin. I don't go right or left because I'm already right above it. So that means that my x-coordinate is 0. But to get to that point, though, I've got to go down 6 units. I went down 6 units. So since I went down, that's going to be a -6. And notice it does correspond to the -6. So this point here, since I'm on the negative x-axis, that's negative y-axis, so that's where this point's located. This point's located on the y-axis, but in particular, it's on the negative part of the y-axis. All right, H. So here's where H is. So I start the origin. To get to H, I'm going to go 5 units to the left. So that means that the x-coordinate is -5. But I don't go up or down because that's the point I want to be at. So I stay there, so that's 0 for y. So the y-coordinate is 0. And then finally I, let's talk about I. Here's where I is located. So notice that I is in quadrant 3. All the x-coordinates are negative, the y-coordinates are negative as well. All right, so I start the origin. All right, so I'm going to go 4 units. I'm going to go to the left 4 units until you get right above it. So -4. And then I'm going to go down, though, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which corresponds to this number right here. All right, so that's in quadrant 3. So notice at any point in quadrant 3, the x is negative and the y is negative. Any point in quadrant 4, the x is positive, y is negative. Any point in quadrant 1, the x is positive, y is positive. Any point in quadrant 2, the x is negative, the y is positive. Okay? All right, so that's going to take care of this lesson. And remember, this lesson was dealing with just plotting ordered pairs. That's all it was.